Hey all, Grolo here. Welcome to this week's look back, which you may have noticed I'm still playing with the naming of. Instead of an architect's look at last week, I'm just thinking back in focus. This is something I actually say with some regularity, like, oh damn, I need to refocus on XYZ. So it kind of jumped at me. And look, the old saying goes there's only two hard problems in computer science: cache invalidation and naming things. The first one may be meaningless to you, but hopefully we can all agree on giving anything a name can be difficult. So if you hate the name, let me know. Otherwise, I'll assume it's fine. The purpose and the format remains the same. This is where we look back a week or so at things happening in gaming or tech, and ideally find some other people also talking about it so we can bring them into the conversation, even if it's against their will, and dig into it. So, two videos came out a few weeks back. One by Bellular News, who we've watched on this channel before, titled, "This is Why AAAs Are Dying Out." And then another by someone new to me, Josh Strife Haynes. His is titled, "Are MMOs dying, or are we just expecting too much?" They both released around the same time, and they're definitely somewhat related. The whole MMOs are dying thing is basically an unending topic at this point, and on any given week, I could probably find one such video to talk about. So, why this one and why now? Well, as a technologist and longtime player of MMOs, I mean, MMOs are basically the only type of game I play, with very few exceptions. I just really wanted to get my opinion in the ring, you know? This is something I spend a lot of time thinking about, a lot of time talking about, and I wanted to bring you all into the conversation and thought process, since that's kind of what I do here. The Josh Strife Hands video in particular resonated with me. His videos are very well edited and produced, by the way, so I'm going to show some clips here that will help us focus on the topic at hand, but I'll have a link in the description below to the full video. I encourage you all to go check out the whole thing, give them a like. Now, before we dig in, a quick plug, because speaking of MMOs, Dune Awakening launches in May. Our community, Unhinged Gaming, just began accepting requests to join up for its release, so if you're looking for a clan to call home in the desert, visit unhinged.gg, follow the link to Discord, and from there, it should be obvious how to get involved. We'd love to have you. The other thing I wanted to mention is I'm planning on doing a live Q&A or AMA or just chat, whatever you want to call it, very soon. Probably mid to late next week, so keep an eye on my YouTube community posts. I'll announce the day and time there once I know it. I'm really looking forward to that, and getting the chance to interact with you all like in real time and have some back and forth. That's going to be cool. Okay, with all that out of the way, let's roll some clips and dig in. In this first clip, Josh Strife Haynes talks about what do players want in an MMO. Interesting. Let's take a look.
To circle back to MMOs, we then need to ask, what does an MMO player want? And this varies. Some want combat, some want narrative, some want PvP, some want fantasy Eastern style graphics, some want grounded Western style, some want pay to win, others don't. The wants of each MMO player are of course different. But there's one thing, one narrative thread, a through line that almost every MMO player does want, one thing we agree on. We all want a massive game. It's right there in the first M of the acronym. We want loads of stuff. Years of content, a second world to live in. The dedicated MMO player doesn't want to blitz through a game in 10 hours, 100 hours, maybe even 1,000 hours. They want a single game they can treat as an alternate reality, a hobby. And it's this combination of player investment, burnout, and expectations for what the game can give which leads to this inevitable cycle.
Okay, first of all, who the hell actually wants pay to win? Ugh. Second of all, I couldn't agree more that players want a massive game. One thing Josh alludes to here, though, is that massive is tied to content. And as you'll see, that's where we fundamentally disagree. That said, I feel Josh's perspective is rooted in reality and what we see before us, while mine's rooted in what could be. Let's continue, though. We'll come back to this. In the second clip here, Josh talks about the cycle.
A player finds an MMORPG game they like. They invest in it, play it for weeks, months, or years, sink a load of their free time into it, and the nature of MMO design encourages this. It facilitates it. It releases more content, more grinds, more long-term goals. And this is great. The mechanics of the game may not be the greatest, but the mechanics are secondary to the experience as a whole. Because the player has formed friendships, bonds, guilds, they've become known within the community. The game becomes more than a game to them. It becomes a home. But eventually, the design of endless grind will cause a player to burn out and fancy a change, if only for a little bit. As lovely as home is, we all like a holiday. And so they swap games. But on average, studies have shown that they only swap games for a bit before coming home. Much like a holiday, it's not permanent. They will try a new game, and suddenly they're not part of the established community already. They are a new player.
So this starts to really highlight what I believe does not make a good MMO. I completely agree that as players spend more time in MMOs, the social constructs within the game inevitably become the most important thing about the game. It's what makes the game sticky, right? It's what keeps players there. There's a sense here that mechanics take a back seat. And I don't know that I fully agree there. I think that's where many games go wrong. They get lazy and rely on the fact that there are other things, such as social circles and things of that nature, that are keeping players engaged. This is helping to set your game up to be toppled. Add on to that the endless grind that he mentions in this clip, and you're starting to make your players resent you. Games begin to weaponize engagement. They incentivize players to log on daily the wrong way. Log in to collect your daily reward, or don't forget to do your daily activities so that you can unlock your weekly thing. If you miss it, you'll fall behind. I don't know many players that like this shit. They'll do it because of FOMO, but they'll get through it as quickly as they can. They'll begin to optimize. They're not logging on because they want to. They're logging on now because they have to. And this actually begins to weaken the social bonds. We just want to get in and get out, right? Now your systems are working against the very thing that naturally keeps people returning over long periods of time. Now, this next clip goes further into the mechanics versus the social factors.
They have no emotional investment in this new game they try, which means the mechanics of that game, instead of being secondary as they were in their home, are now the focus on their holiday. And they question, is this fun to play without friends? Is it a good game without all of the supporting lifestyle and connections that we've made? Does it stand up without nostalgia? Much like how making friends as an adult is far harder than making friends as a kid, interaction with other players in this new game to you becomes sparse, it becomes difficult. You don't want to put the emotional time, energy, and investment into building an entire new friendship group up again, and now the game needs to shine on its own mechanical merits, which sets up a bit of a paradox. We judge our favorite MMORPG heavily off the emotional experiences we had within it, and we judge newer games off the mechanical experiences we have within them. Now, some people may indeed find a new game they actually prefer by doing this, but the call to your home is only ever one expansion away.
In response to this clip, I want to address the up-and-coming MMOs. The existing title holders in the MMO space are resting on their laurels. You can crush them on mechanics, but the expansion call is real, right? Like you said, the return home is only one expansion away. But here's the thing, and perhaps a hot take that I have. Content is not king. You can beat the established and entrenched MMOs by avoiding their rules and playing by your own. You need to make the systems king. We'll leave it there for now. We're going to dive deeper on this shortly. As for judging a game on mechanics without friends, I have to say it. That's what communities like Unhinged Gaming are for. You get to keep your friends from game to game. So if you have the problem Josh was talking about here, you may need to click on the link in the description below. Having been here for a long time, I honestly can't relate to this problem very well, but in Josh's next clip, they talk about the population pendulum. This is good stuff. Let's check this out.
Imagine 3 games, we'll just call them A, B, and C, each with a player base of 100 people. This is unrealistic, but it keeps the numbers nice and simple. People will play their game until they get burned out. This will differ from person to person. Some people will commit their entire life to it, some people will leave within a week. But let's imagine the next time we check these numbers, we discover that 20 players from game A have gone to game B, 10 from game B have gone to game C, and 5 from game C have gone to game A. Does this mean game A is dying? Does it mean B is growing? Does it mean C is somewhat stable? It could mean both all of and none of these things. It could be the natural flux of a finite amount of players within a genre simply moving around. But what happens when an expansion for game B releases and suddenly 20 players from A and 20 players from C decide to hop back over? Is B now the best game? Do players from A and C suddenly look at the numbers and think, oh no, my game is dying, best hop ship to a successful one? And
the expansion and contraction that he speaks of here, this is real. I've observed this, as I'm sure you have. In our community, we play predominantly MMOs, and even just within the community, you can see the shifting around, of players from one MMO to the other, depending on patch cycles and expansions and all that kind of thing. Is this just the way of things? Like, are we relegated to this reality forever? Yeah, yes and no. More on that in a bit, I promise. Let's first see how Josh describes what happens when a new MMO enters the scene.
But now imagine a new company has seen this finite player base and wants a piece of the pie, so they create Game D. Now because D is new, it doesn't have as much content as A, B, or C, but it has a new art style and a new combat loop, so a few people from each game go to try it, because they're burnt out of their current game. It might even bring some entirely new people into the genre who weren't there before, which is great. But then, over time, those players also go through the same burnout cycle and expand away from D to try one of the other 3 games, A, B, or C. Maybe D releases an expansion to encourage people to return, but it's now competing with 3 already established games, and it just can't keep up with the amount of content. And it's starting to lose money too, because it was expensive to make and expensive to run, so it adds some pay-to-win stuff into the cash shop to milk.
Pay-to-win stuff into the cash shop to milk the player base, yeah. We all know how that ends. What was the last big finished, not talking alpha, but finished MMO launch that you can remember? For me, it was New World. Big launch, self-inflicted wounds, eroded the player base. It ended with a whimper and an expansion and selling of like loadout slots, and then it went to console to milk some more players. And I don't even know if there's anything next for that game. It's sad. Like, I really enjoyed that game. But to Josh's point, like, players go on a holiday to this new MMO. It didn't work out for them, and they returned to whatever it was they were playing, Blizzard launches a new expansion, so does Final Fantasy. Blizzard launches Diablo, then a new season of WoW, season of Discovery, and soon all the players are back to where they started. Josh's video kind of insinuates that this is inevitable. I'm not sure how he actually feels, but that's what I got from it. I'm not so sure it is. I think a big part of why it happens is that games are playing by the same rules as the pack leaders. And I think they're doing this because of, a number of things, but chief among them probably just risk aversity. If you're a newcomer to the MMO scene and you come in with a formula similar to WoW or ESO or etc., then of course you're going to be at a massive disadvantage. They've got decades of content and social circle development and all of that on you, as he points out. Now, I'm not going to say it's impossible to compete head on with like this, but to his points, the cost will be staggering. And so that leads me to my first point, which is new competitors have to play by their own rules. They need to get over being risk averse. This is why I'm placing my bets on the upstarts. The new studios and the crowdfunded games of tomorrow. It's because they are taking chances and because they have more risk tolerance than the huge AAA studios and MMO companies of yesterday. For example, and as I mentioned earlier, I completely disagree that content is king. A big cornerstone of that video we just watched was that content keeps pulling people back. And I fundamentally disagree that this is an unstoppable eventuality. I think the successful MMOs we have use this strategy, and it's all we know to work. And so we assume content is king. However, I wholeheartedly think systems are king. Not the computer systems upon which the games run, though tech is important too. And we'll talk about that. But I'm referring to the systems within a game in which players interact with to do things, right? Looking at a game like EVE Online. Now, my knowledge of EVE is not entirely up to date, so it's entirely possible that I'm about to say something wrong, but my point will remain, so bear with me, because I'm talking about the majority of EVE's existence. So EVE Online released in 2003. That means it predates WoW. EVE's content drip has been anemic. The universe in which players exist doesn't really change that often. There's no new raids. What you get with big updates are like new systems, refined systems, maybe some new tech. But if you had a badass ship in EVE 10 years ago, chances are it's still a pretty badass ship today. Chances are, too, that you know where everything is, and you can still navigate around just fine. There hasn't been like an unending avalanche of expansions that whisk you around to new worlds and new continents and deprecate everything you ever owned, which, with each passing year. Now, here's the thing. EVE Online was pretty successful with its recipe, despite it being a spreadsheet simulator that would cause most people's eyes to just glaze over. Imagine a similar recipe, but with a killer engine, orders of magnitude higher fidelity and scope, and well, you can start to see why I'm excited about the potential of Star Citizen, what Star Citizen could be. It really stands to challenge the status quo with a system-centric design, but with a scope and level of fidelity that surpasses all existing entrants. And it's not the only one. We're going to talk about others, right? But this is the type of disruption the genre has needed. And I won't hide the fact that I'm very pro in this game for these reasons. I mean, that's why I talk about it on this channel so much. But that doesn't mean it's a foregone conclusion. There's all sorts of missteps that could be made along the way that have it stumbling at the goal line and falling into the traps we mentioned above, right? Which brings me back to New World. This was an MMO that during all of alpha and beta was trying to be different. Right at the goal line, AGS got like cold feet or something, and they released a traditional MMO competitor. The likes of what all the existing heavyweights already had. Some of the tech was better. The action combat was pretty good. The graphics and audio were fantastic. There were some real limitations of the engine at launch, which didn't help, and some really bad exploits that all came together to kind of decapitate the game before it ever found its footing. Primarily, in my opinion, because AGS was playing by someone else's rules. Dungeon grind, check. Shitty crafting, check. Solo gathering, check. A battleground, check. Chest runs. Well, I guess that was kind of new and dumb. At least in the beginning, they seemed to be going with like more of a horizontal progression, which was good. But in the end, when they began to milk the player base for as they were going down in flames. They even gave up on that and released an expansion that deprecated everything that came before. It's a horrible choice. It resulted in like one last gasp on the PC before they just gave up and jumped over to console. I mean, you get the idea. Now, I just mentioned technology, right? New World had some decent technology. The interesting thing about technology in this context is that it acts as a bit of an equalizer over time, right? Meaning it should get easier and easier for upstarts to unseat the dominant players as technology improves. And there's no reason to believe that will not hold true. The only thing that could act in opposition to that would be that the entrenched players like Blizzard and, the other studios, they use these technology advances to defend the land that they've taken and like ward off the invaders, right? But that's extremely unlikely. Here's a short clip from the video that Bellular News did that I mentioned, and it touches on this topic, kind of.
Today's story is a serious one because Warner Brothers games just killed multiple studios, and the one most people will recognize, of course, is Monolith. They made Shadow of Mordor, they made Fear, Condemned, and rather cruelly, they just celebrated their 30th anniversary. You probably also know the Nemesis system, which was what drove the Shadow of Mordor enemies. It was a fairly amazing system, and it was so good that WB patented it. And I'm sure they'd be happy enough to act as a bit of a patent troll against other people's game designs with it, but we know they actually loved it so much that they used it. They used the Nemesis system to ram Shadow of War full of game-killing monetization, which played a major factor in that game's performance, which, by the way, was really bad.
Speaking of systems, the Nemesis system was a good one. It's a shame about the performance of their games towards the end. An example of what I'm talking about, though, right? Rather than employ evolving technology to bolster their position in the industry, they just closed a bunch of doors. And this is the norm. And I realize this was not an MMO company, but the same things happen in all game-making companies. And beyond, right? Like, companies get too greedy. They get too comfortable, too profit-hungry, too obsessed with the line that their stock price is or otherwise. Innovation falters and gives rise to squeezing the existing product. Like I said, this holds true even outside of gaming. Very few companies are willing to eat their own lunch. If you haven't heard of the phrase, like, it refers to a company launching a new class of product that will cannibalize the sales of an existing product, right? It's what causes Google to make bad decisions in defense of their AdSense business. It's what led Microsoft to making horrible decisions in defense of its Windows and Office businesses. Those decisions that ceded huge swaths of Office and OS share to competitors. And to this day, Microsoft has not recovered on that front. They're growing like crazy again, but it's from new markets that they've entered. Ones that took a new CEO to be willing to do. Apple was one of the few tech giants that had an appetite for its own lunch back in the day. And it served them well. There were actually calls from investors for them to not include iPod functionality in the iPhone, for fears that it would destroy a ludicrously profitable class of products, the iconic iPod lineup, right? They did it anyway. And sure enough, it destroyed the iPod products over time. But it paved the way to a product that literally reinvented their business and catapulted them to the most valuable company in the world. Now, in their new position, do they still have that appetite for eating their own lunch? I'm not so sure. I haven't seen any evidence of it in recent years. I can only hope that time proves me wrong, but it could be they'll follow in the footsteps of many before them. But back to gaming and MMOs. All of this is why it's unlikely for Blizzard or any of the others to save themselves from the inevitable advance of technology. When EVE Online launched, the technology wasn't there for them to build the likes of Star Citizen, right? But the tech is there now. Like CIG is showing that it can be done. You know, as slowly as things are moving, like they are moving, and we are starting to see, like, this could happen, right? CCP, the company behind EVE Online, like, they could have went for it. They had a huge installed player base. Like, they had the vision at one point. There was that, I forget what patch it was, where they did, like, the walking in stations where you could finally get out of your ship and walk through the station. They released Dust 514, which was like a console game that interacted and interfaced with the EVE Online universe. So, like, they had the beginnings of the pieces. They had the vision that they couldn't execute on it. I don't know. They have to be looking at the March of Star Citizen now as like some sort of a doomsday clock. I would expect that monetization within that game will continue to get like more aggressive as a result as Star Citizen gets closer to launch. I mean, I would, right? On another front, look at all the fan art coming out that shows like what WoW 2 could look like. Look at the calls for like Classic Plus and a reboot of the franchise, and WoW and Blizzard, they have all the money and all the people power like they need. I mean, to be the ones to make it happen. But they won't. Someone will. Someone will beat them to it. Or some other company will release a game that follows a different set of rules and employs technology so obviously better than what any game today or then does. Similar to how WoW did it in 2004, And it will mostly supplant one or more of the existing heavyweight MMOs, There were a lot of MMOs active when WoW launched in 2004. I mean, we had EverQuest, Ultima Online, Dark Age of Camelot, Asheron's Call, RuneScape. When WoW launched, it didn't like supplant one other game. It bled them all. It kind of feels like we're in that similar state today with WoW, Final Fantasy 14, ESO, Guild Wars 2, EVE Online. Like, they're all kind of living in this harmony, all with like aging technology, just waiting for the next seismic disruption of the space, which I have no doubt is coming. The unending advance of technology and the historic trends of entrenched studios being unable to keep pace with it, like, it all but guarantees it. Will it be any of the alpha MMOs that we're watching be built right now? I mean, there's a lot of them. Star Citizen, Ashes of Creation, Pax Dei, the Riot MMO, which, we know nothing about, so I kind of ignore that one. Amazon, they're working like on a new Lord of the Rings, which I also kind of ignore just because of their history with New World. I don't know for sure, but I'm optimistic for a few reasons. As I mentioned earlier, the funding models on these games are allowing these studios to take risks. And the technology available is empowering at the same time. They just need to execute on a vision that redefines the rules. Which brings us back to the title of this video. Is it still possible to make a good MMO? All the are MMOs dying videos may have you asking that question, or assuming another good one will never be built because it's a dead genre. Which Josh did a great job of debunking in the clips that we watched of his. But the question remains, how? Now, I'm about to get super opinionated on you because why bother watching or listening to me at all if I'm just going to give some generic take no stance view that tries to appeal to everyone, which, by the way, is a terrible way to make a great MMO, trying to appeal to too many people. Define the kind of player that you want to appeal to and take a stance. The only game that can appeal to everyone is like a boring game that just barely appeals to anyone. And it wouldn't keep players for long. Anyway, here's my opinions on what would make a good MMO capable of toppling like the big entrenched games. And to be clear, I don't think every game must follow this recipe. There can and should be variations. Remember, like, not every game has to appeal to everyone. After we talk about these opinions, we'll evaluate how the up-and-coming MMOs stack up to these opinions. So, here goes. The emphasis must be on systems over content. Content is like the icing atop the systems, which are the cake. One thing I strongly agree with in the first clip that we watched from Josh is that MMO players are looking for that third place. They're looking for an alternate reality, right? Look no further than IRL for inspiration. IRL doesn't have a ton of content. Your life isn't drastically changing from day to day. It's not like an avalanche of new things for you to consume. I mean, unless you count TV, but what life is a whole damn lot of systems for you to interact with. Keeps it interesting, right? Deliver players strong enough systems and enough system variety, and they will generate content for you. Just like IRL. And this will be like far better than any content the game, like the maker of the game, could possibly generate for a number of reasons. One, it'll be unending, and two, unpredictable. And that latter point is a huge one. One large complaint of today's MMOs is that, like, it's all figured out, right? There's no discovery. There's no magic anymore. Like, you log in, you go to a website, it says, hey, here's the best configuration or the best spec or the best whatever. You know, here's how to do the quest, or here's like the order of you need to do things in. It's fucking boring. Like, who even has fun following all these guides all the time? Like this isn't possible with player-driven content, right? Like, you never know what you're going to get. Nobody can, like, chart it out ahead of time. If it's, like, dynamic, player-driven, like, emergent things bubbling to the surface, like, now you have something that's magical. Something that will force players to think and reason and experience that, like, novelty, right? Even WoW in 2004 was bolstered immensely by, like, player-driven content. It might sound funny in, like, such an on-rails game, but in 2004, whenever you had the original, like, there was a lot of on-rails activities, but there was a ton of player content. There were, like, council meetings between guilds and IRL weddings and funerals and all taking place in the game. Player events organized on forums, right? Such as, like, world PvP events or huge gladiator tournaments. I mean, you name it. Even some of that in 2019, whenever it re-released. But, I mean, the world was just like a buzz with activity, you know? This didn't go away because we got old and we turned to queues and lobbies. Like, it died because the games de-incentivized it, and they failed to support it. So, the next best MMO, or MMOs, will figure out how to support this. And not just support it as, like, auxiliary content, but as primary content. For inspiration on this, like I said, look at 2004 Classic WoW. During a time when, like, game masters still walked the lands, which helped to like keep the griefing and some of that stuff in check, which opened up the world for this kind of thing, you know? That's another thing. I mean, you know, griefing can kind of work in opposition of player-driven content, but there are ways to combat that, as we have seen. Another game to look at for inspiration would be EVE Online, you know? Players have like a direct line to the company for coordinating things like server bolstering to handle like large player events. I mean, that's cool. Next point, the next great MMOs will remove barriers that keep players from playing together. Player levels and item levels and skill levels and on and on. They're all just like buckets, right? And players are bucketed based on the values of these things. And then like they can only play with other players in their bucket. It's ridiculous that a genre of game that thrives on social interactions and circles, like they throw out these arbitrary buckets like this. Like, this needs to go away. There's plenty of ways to progress a character that don't preclude them from joining in activities with other characters. If you need inspiration, look at how Star Citizen and Pax Dei play today. Both perfectly model this. Like a lot of survival games also demonstrate this well. You know, while they're not MMOs, they're still multiplayer games, and they can serve as inspiration for sure. You know, I think the next great MMOs, they're going to remove the treadmill and replace it with like enjoyable activities. You know, as we already touched on, like these top MMOs build engagement by forcing you into activities that you hate, or at least that you grow to hate. People used to log in to chat, or because they enjoyed a certain game loop. You know, now it's for a daily reward or to complete a thing that they have to do every day for a currency so that they can get this thing before this date or they'll forever be behind. It's bullshit. Make the game good, make it enjoyable, and players will log in because they want to, not because they have to, so that you can meet your engagement numbers for your like quarterly report. You want inspiration on this? Look at I don't know. Look at mining in EVE Online. I've known people, like countless people, that just loved logging in to mine, just to mine ore in EVE. Like, why? It didn't take much brain power. It was a relaxing activity. It was social. You know, your group was rewarded for working together. Like your efficiency went up. Your social interactions went up. Like everything was aligned, right? In the right direction. How many MMOs do you know where resource gathering is viewed so fondly? Like, who says they can't wait to go mine and WoW? Or how much did you enjoy chopping trees in New World? This was a super rare achievement by EVE. And whoever is looking to be crowned the next great MMO should be taking notes. Whether it's Star Citizen looking to make a resource extraction loop that benefits from social interaction, or something like Pax Dei looking to turn like one player swinging an axe into a tree into like a group of players working to clear a forest with like wagons and everything. Your game needs to have like low-key, enjoyable game loops that invite socialization. Like, do not implement daily rewards and daily requirements just for logging in. Like, I'm also looking at you, Pax Dei. Tisk tisk. The miracle system is already like a daily login reward. I was sad to see that. Now, PvP is the most difficult topic of them all because there's a number of ways to get this right. And how you go about it predominantly should really be influenced by how your game handles progression. But for simplicity, I'll say that PvP should be incentivized with significant rewards, but mostly opt-in. And I think that'll cover the broadest range of cases. There's lots of reasons for this. I'm no Care Bear. I want to play it in a dangerous game where, like, I'm always looking over my shoulder. I mean, just go look at my recent video and take on Star Citizen's item recovery changes for proof. Like, but I also know that not everyone wants to be looking over their shoulder all the time. And I recognize the new realities of gaming. And like it or not, like, what's happening on Twitch and YouTube, like, it's changed gaming forever. If ever there was an opportunity for like an even playing field, like, that is not the case anymore. If anyone has been in the ashes of Creation Alpha, like, you know, if you were on the same server as Pirate Software and his gang, like, they were basically bigger than all other guilds combined on that server. Like, they could deny anyone of anything they wanted simply because of a popular streamer at the helm, right? This isn't fun for a lot of people. I recognize this. And I say this as the lead of a large and growing gaming group that can and will hold its own. But not everyone is into that. It's not about like Care Bear versus badasses. It's about like how forces outside the game greatly control or influence what's going on inside the game. Like from streaming popularity to the exchange rate of in-game currency with the USD, right? Like, for inspiration on doing PvP right, like, I would look at Pax Dei's plan and how EVE Online handled this for decades. There's probably other great examples too. Hit me with them in the comments if you have a strong opinion on what is a great example here. But, I also want to hope that Star Citizen's plan will be great, but their plan is a little fuzzy to me. We'll talk about these more when we look at how the up-and-coming MMOs stack up to these ideals. But lastly, it should go without saying that the next great MMO will not be pay to win at all in any capacity. Now, this is easier said than done, primarily because like the players themselves will work to make it happen in conjunction with botting and etc. But this is not, as much as the existing MMO game studios would want us to believe, this is not an unwinnable battle. Like, figure it out. How can like the e-commerce giants have figured it out and mitigated fraud like decades ago, where like in the e-commerce space that like the rewards, the potential rewards for bad actors are so much higher. But we've mitigated it. We've made tremendous strides and progress there. These MMO companies, they're still floundering. Now, it's exactly what I just hinted at. Like, the financial incentives are not there for the MMO companies to spend the money to solve it. Like, where it is there with the e-commerce giants. So, I think it's we, the players, need to put it there for them. Like, we need to help them out. Say, this needs solved. Okay. Rapid summary of everything we just kind of described. 1, focus on systems. 2, remove player bucketing. Allow players to play together. 3, replace treadmill with things that players actually want to log in and do. 4, strongly incentivize PvP, but have some safe zones. 5, support player-driven content is a primary form of content. 6, bring modern technology to bear in such a way that it like dismantles interest in the current crop of MMOs. Similar to how like Nest dismantled interest in Pac-Man and Space Invaders. By Nest, I mean Nintendo Entertainment System, right? If you remember when that came out, like But I don't know if you remember, but like things like Pac-Man and Space Invaders, you could still see them as arcade cabinets in like convenience stores and pizza places and everything when the NES came out, but it didn't take long for the NES to destroy interest in that stuff. That's the kind of like technology leap we need to see in the next great MMO. Now, let's talk about how the up-and-coming title challengers stack up against these opinions and ideals. We're going to look at three, right? Like the three that I'm paying a lot of attention to, at least. Star Citizen, Ashes of Creation, Pax Dei. If there's an MMO that you're watching, I'd love to know how you think it stacks up to these ideas or otherwise, your own. Drop it in the comments. Let's start with Ashes. Ashes is definitely building like systems. There's a lot of promise in the things that they've shown and the things that we've gotten our hands on. The node system is compelling. I mean, it's got its problems for sure. But the systems around node development and the mounts and the caravans and the ships and the trading and the sieging, like they all look promising. Like there are problems in the alpha, but like I still look at all this and I think this could come together in a very promising way. Of course, like we're not there yet. It's going to require a lot of iteration, a lot of feedback cycles, blah, blah, blah. But, it could wind up there. The combat systems that they have in place, I think are really good for the stage of the game. I'll give them an A on effort when it comes to the systems. But they're failing on player bucketing, for sure. There's a hell of a level grind at this point. And there's all sorts of like hidden loot rules and edge cases that it seems to be working against player grouping outside of your prescribed bucket. This is unfortunate, and it'll just stand in the way of like two people wanting to play together, which is I think the last thing you want. Now when it comes to the treadmill, it's a little less clear to me with Ashes. The strong systems in place, they seem like they could work well late game with some major exceptions, which we'll get to in a moment. But the professions and leveling are all very like major grinds right now. Now I'm all for like a journey when it comes to leveling systems. Like if your game is gonna go with a leveling system and you want to make it like a very integral part of the game, like I can get behind that. But it can't be something that players are trying to rush through just to get to the end game. And it feels too early to tell on this. So I'm going to reserve judgment because like right now we're only in alpha and players are already rushing through it. Like they just go and they stand in a spot where a bunch of mobs are spawning and they just sit there and they kill things for 12 hours a day just to get to the max level. So that like, and a lot of this could just be because like not all the systems are in place yet. I know like not all the dynamics events are there and who knows, but like if Ashes cannot kill that urge for players to rush through it, I think they need to just abandon it. Like it doesn't feel good. Now, as for PvP, Ashes is creating a brutal landscape, right? Where groups are going to work to deny other groups resources everywhere all the time. Like there will be no escaping it. Now they have like anti-griefing systems in place that seem to work pretty well. But the problem is that like other players and groups, they can use the environment against you. They don't have to like directly attack you. There's so many ways for them to deny you access to things, to grief you, to do whatever. And I think that is the biggest factor and what I believe will have Ashes being like more of a niche MMO. That's not a bad thing. Remember, like you can't please everyone and you need to define your audience. Like Ashes has very clearly defined its audience as players who really enjoy competitive play at all times. They see an underserved market here, and I think we need to give them the space to prove that they're correct. Like, if it's not your thing, I suggest looking at one of the next two games that we're going to discuss. Now, lastly, on the technology front for Ashes, like, it gets an A. Definitely gets an A for effort on the tech. You know, they're basically second only behind Star Citizen when it comes to pushing technical boundaries, and they're going for a type of server meshing that could see us all enjoying some of the most like epically large PvP battles we've ever seen in a like medieval fantasy MMO setting. So, yeah, that's super promising. You know, of the 3 games that we're going to discuss, like, I would say Ashes falls the furthest outside of the opinions I've laid out, which again, I think will yield a niche game, but one that could enjoy great success within that niche for a long time. You know, just look at EVE Online, which we've discussed quite a bit in this video, but it's been a very successful niche MMO for like 22 years at this point. So niches can thrive, right? I doubt the creators of EVE Online are disappointed with the success of their creation. Anyway, next, let's look at Pax Dei. On the systems front, Pax Dei is offering a lot of promise, just like all 3 of these games, honestly. And this should come as no surprise from a game studio that has quite a few ex-EVE Online devs aboard. You know, they got a start of a really good crafting system, which they continue to iterate on. They have the most advanced building system in any MMO I've ever seen. And they have a well laid out vision for kingdoms and religions and sieges, territory control, conflict zones. They have a fairly unique and promising approach to having PvP and PvE coexist. I'm really excited about their take on this. I'm a huge fan of it. Really, I think if you're not familiar with it, here's a quick summary. Like 90% of the world is like normal, no PvP by default. Like about 10% of the world, I might have the percentages slightly wrong, but it's around there, right? Like about 10% is like always PvP on. Anybody in that area is flagged and they're able to be PvP'd. Now, that 10% has the highest resources, the highest rewards. You know, Pax Dei is definitely a game that is like resource-driven, much like EVE Online was. You need it for all the crafting and all the building, and basically all the things that you want to do in Pax rely on these resources. And so these zones, these conflict zones, are the richest in that stuff. Now, you can choose, not yet, it's not in the game quite yet, but this is the plan. You can choose to become a knight. If you do, then you are flagged everywhere all the time, even in the 90% areas. Like, you can be killed by other knights. Now, like a PvE person that is not a knight, they can't attack you in those zones. But this is my understanding. Correct me if I'm wrong on any of this, but another knight can attack you anywhere, anytime, anywhere in the world. But in exchange, knights are the only ones that are able to build and claim land in those conflict zones that we were just talking about. So, and like, these are going to be like siegeable fortresses and castles and whatever, but they're going to be very close to like the super rich resource areas, right? So like, in theory, like if you're able to hold and defend territory as a knight in those areas, like your resource income is going to be far greater than like it would be any other way. So yeah, to me, this just seems like a really good solution to having like the 2 player types coexist. I'm not sure yet if it's perfect or if the rewards are high enough. They sound like they are, but it's definitely a good starting point and source of inspiration. When I think about it, I think of the movies with the chase scenes, you know, like where you have like innocent bystanders being like tossed out of the way as like some epic chase is happening. Like instead of cops and robbers with like cars and guns, it'll be like knights under different banners with horses and crossbows, but it'll be cool. You know, they'll be riding through like some PvE territory, firing and battling each other as like the people farming the vegetables are just like running out of the way. So I definitely give Pax Dei an A on their PvP system. Now, what about player bucketing? Also an A in Pax Dei. Like, a player can log into Pax Dei for the first time, and they can be exploring the hardest content in the game alongside their clanmates. You know, after their clanmates are kind enough to outfit them with some decent gear from like the clan's vaults. I think this is amazing. It ensures that anybody who wants to play together can play together and be effective, right? And actually like be progressing whatever it is they want to be doing, which is like core and fundamental to the game. Now, what about the treadmill? I need the ding Pax Dei here. They've already, we're in, it's still an early access alpha game. They've already implemented like a miracle faith system or whatever they're calling it, where like you can earn this currency or like this resource on your character by logging in each day. So each day you log in, your resource goes up a little bit. This earns them a big ding from me. F. Big F. On top of that, resource collection gets boring fast. It reminds me of like New World, right? Where you're chopping down endless waves of trees just to power your coal plants and refine your metals, and it's just Now, how do you mitigate the boredom? Not by teaming up with your mates. That doesn't make it go faster. Like your resource rate is just number of mates times, it's linear. It's not exponential or anything like EVO Online. Which is, I would have expected ex-EVO Online devs to take a bigger swing at this, but But no, the way you mitigate it is by logging in every day and collecting that miracle power. You can use that miracle power to speed up resource collection, which you'll still do by yourself. It won't be social. I'd really love to see them add a social aspect to this part of the game, to like resource gathering and that. I mean, these devs have experience in one of the games that did it best. Now, when it comes to player-driven content being like top-tier content, Pax Dei delivers in spades there. From players literally shaping the world, like in the image that they want, like through the top-tier building system, to the upcoming kingdoms and religions, like the entire game is going to be about player-driven content, just as Eve was, really. So definitely an A there. And lastly, on tech, PAX is taking a much safer approach than either Star Citizen or Ashes of Creation. And this may be a very good thing from like the point of view of actually delivering the game, like in a sane amount of time. But also, no risk, no reward, right? Like, the downside of their conservative approach is that the players will be dealing with the kind of sharding and phasing and all that they've come to expect from every other MMO. So nothing new on that front, outside of like wide open world transitions between servers. Pax Dei is kind of heavily invested in the prescribed UE5 backend and way of doing things. So, one other, I would say, innovative thing Pax Dei is doing is they're working with Discord. So Discord is going to form the backbone of the in-game communication system. So like the clan communication or guild communication, party communication, in-game voice, like all of that is going to travel over Discord. And presumably, like you'll be able to see clan chat on like a Discord channel. You can already like see it in your DMs. Like if I'm DMing somebody, I get DMs in Discord from people on PAX and it'll say like under the name, like sent from Pax Dei, right? And I can respond to them and they'll get that response in the game. So that's pretty cool. I got to give them props on that. I'm wondering if that'll be another trend, seeing like deeper Discord integration. Part of me thinks it could be cool, especially for communities like ours. I could really see us being able to take advantage of that. But another part of me is like, Discord kind of sucks. I love Discord for text. I hate it for voice. Like Discord does not scale for voice. It scales great for like, a dungeon or even a raid. Like, but when you get to like a lot of people in a very complicated operation where like a lot of people need to be talking back and forth instead of just like one or two people issuing orders to everybody who sit there silently, like Discord really falters quickly. Like I miss the TeamSpeak whisper groups and all that stuff. No, I say I miss it, but we have a TeamSpeak server explicitly because of this reason. We primarily use it for Star Citizen, but who knows, we may use it for other games in the future too. Speaking of, I'm getting off topic. We'll talk about that kind of stuff another day. Anyway, so overall, there's a lot of promise here, and I expect PAX has, a real shot at becoming like a long-standing member of the MMO community. One thing that is not on my opinions or list that I may be working against PAX is like branding. Now, don't get me wrong, like Pax Dei is a beautiful game, and like the stuff that people created in it are like incredible. Like, we got a steady stream of screenshots on our Discord server that just make me be like, wow, the creativity and ingenuity of people's pretty amazing. But it still feels fairly generic in that like it feels very much like a UE5 game. You know what I mean? Like, and they have not yet proven that they can deliver a great combat. The combat still is boring as hell, and it's the reason I haven't played as much as I might otherwise be. But these are obviously both things that they can they change over time, and I'm definitely rooting for them, and I'll be watching closely. Lastly, let's talk about Star Citizen. When it comes to systems, Star Citizen intends to deliver, and I mean deliver, like deliver, insanely deliver, with just a tremendous number of skill-based loops. And I mean like IRL skill-based, not like player in-game skill numbers, right? Like in Star Citizen, whenever you're mining, like that is like a hand-eye coordination and knowing the buttons. Like it feels like you're testing your skills in real life. And it's the same for pretty much all of the game loops in the game. Like that's pretty awesome, actually. Even when it comes to like going through a wormhole, between star systems. They even have like a little mini game there where you actually got to like steer and avoid things in the wormhole or get kicked out early. Like all the systems in there like are actually testing you as a person, your skills. And that really paves the way for some cool stuff, which we'll talk about. But, and everything from like various forms of mining, right? Like hand mining, ship mining, ground vehicle mining. They just brought out the first powered armor mining. Well, it's going to be coming out in 4.1. So like salvaging ship hulls and components to supporting a ship. With this life support systems and gravity and all that stuff through like engineering gameplay. Now that's not in the game yet, but presumably it's coming soon. It was supposed to be pretty close to done last year. Hacking and transporting data, medical gameplay, prison and capture gameplay, survival gameplay. I mean, you have to eat, you have to drink, you have to eventually I think we're going to have to go to the bathroom and clean ourselves. But even beyond all that, I mean, there's going to be base building, keeping those bases running, moving cargo, defending yourself and others through like some pretty, honestly, fantastic flight and FPS controls. I mean, you'll find haters on Spectrum, right, that are bashing the flight system and the flight model and blah, blah, blah. But like, dude, as just an MMO player, you come into this, you're going to be impressed. Maybe not if you're used to actually flying like, you know, fighter jets in real life, but if you're a casual to even like pretty hardcore MMO player, like you're gonna really enjoy it. Now, really, there's so much to the systems and plans of Star Citizen that like it's a bit daunting to even try to describe it all. But also, honestly, like a lot of it is just not here yet. The stuff that is here, it's like tier 0, and they have like this huge like roadmap and set of goals in front of them, and so we just don't know what it'll all look like or how good it'll be, you know. But the intent sure is there. When it comes to player bucketing, does not exist in Star Citizen, which is a huge win. Again, like at least today, like, and I see nothing on their roadmap that will change this. Like, your first day logging into the game, there's nothing preventing you from being aboard ship with me and seeing everything the verse has to offer. Like, I'll fly over, pick you up, and we'll be off to the stars. So that's a huge A. You know, of the 3 games, Star Citizen seems to be approaching the treadmill problem the best. There's no mention of daily rewards or like burdensome daily milestones to be met. It's definitely being designed to incentivize socialization in like mundane loops such as resource extraction. There's always people looking to pair up on like mining runs or salvage expeditions. You know, we have every reason to believe that like that'll be even more the case as the game approaches completion. Like there's even bigger ships on the horizon for mining and salvaging, and there's entirely new vessels coming out that like add like new steps into the mining process, like refining and stuff like that. So, you know, the types of operations that we'll be able to host and the number of players that those operations will demand will just continue to get larger as we get closer to release. And like that's what was so great about Eve. Like the more players you got together doing kind of like this otherwise mundane thing of like pulling metal out of the ground, like the more efficient you got. And I think Star Citizen stands to nail that better than any of them, just based on what we know so far. Now, as for PvP, while it's wobbling at the moment, the destination seems to be something akin to EVE Online, where like some zones are more dangerous, others are quite a bit safer, with like game systems and NPCs kind of restricting the likelihood of PvP. If they can get it right, this sounds like a pretty reasonable approach to me. As for strongly incentivizing PvP, that's TBD. Like most of what I've seen or so far is like how fun it'll be. You know, like capital ship combat looks great, player station rating looks great, but will the rewards be worth it? That remains to be seen. Could be. A lot of it depends on like how important resources are, like how strong the player economy is, stuff like that. I think at this point, and there's a lot of like things in flux at the moment. I don't think we have a lot of answers to those types of questions just yet. But on the technology front, like there's really no comparison. Like Star Citizen is pushing boundaries like no other game, right? And so with all of this, it's probably obvious why I spend so much time talking about this game on this channel. But there's huge risks, of course. Like the technology is, you know, it's innovative and it's not complete. And there's always risks of overruns. And those risks have materialized again and again. Delivering on all the promises remains, you know, CIG's biggest challenge. You know, perhaps another big challenge for CIG is going to be avoiding pay to win. You know, avoiding the pay to win label at least. Like we've started to see how things like armor sales are invading game design with like this tier 0 item recovery thing. Now, we don't have much of a sense of what like post-launch monetization is going to look like, but this could be a large stumbling block for the game. Time will surely tell, but it's one of those things like it's going to be, if it's a stumbling block, it's going to be close to the goal line. Now, if they play their cards right, and that's a big if, but it could be the next seismic shift in MMO gaming. You know, of all the games up and coming, like, it stands the best chance, in my opinion. I see it drawing in a lot of players that are not typically in the genre. You know, back to Josh Strife Haynes' point of like some MMOs coming out and like drawing in more players who were not previously in the genre. I see that already happening in Star Citizen. And it's not even released. I mean, you know, friends who live in Battlefield and Call of Duty, like, they're coming into the game. The folks who love exploring in No Man's Sky, like, the sheer vastness of Star Citizen, like, calls to those people. You know, the idea of living in like a breathing universe where like your squad's actions matter, like that calls to the FPS folks. You know, I've chatted with them and asked them about it. I mean, it's very interesting to the ones that I know, at least. And I think it's this like blend of like player-driven content, emergent gameplay, extremely robust systems, atop cutting-edge technology that could very well have Star Citizen like bleeding every other MMO for years, much like WoW in 2004. As it becomes like the next big backdrop for like a new wave of like MMO-based human connection, right? Like, it's a ton of hopium, no doubt. I'm going to beat all those people that are ready to rush to my comments and cry hopium. Like, yes, I know. But like, we can hope, right? And that brings us to, is it possible? Of course it's possible. More than that, like, it's inevitable. But it's going to be freaking hard. It's going to be a slog. Even if content isn't king, right? Like, even if you all agree with me and like we can establish content's not king, like we can replace like this sheer mountain of content that we can't compete with some of these established games. We can compete by focusing on the systems, right? Even in that case, like, we are still needing to build the best systems ever seen at a scale and level of fidelity never seen before. We're going to have to marry modern technology with superior game design and like impeccable execution. But we're not asking for too much. I think we're asking for what it will take. Because if this can't be delivered, well, then what we have will suffice, I guess. This is an enormous challenge. There's quite a few companies going for it. You know, we'll be lucky if one of them succeeds. But if one of these do not succeed, like if none of these people that are going for it now, if none of them succeed, like, it's only a matter of time until someone else does. And I think that's a great dramatic line to end this on, finally. So I know this has been a longer one, but yeah. So I'm going to end it there. I know you all have thoughts on this, a lot of thoughts, I'm sure. So hit me with them in the comments, and I will catch you there. Appreciate y'all. Thanks again for watching. Grolo out.